The Grizzlies saw the jump that Desmond Bane made. Desmond Bane made one of the biggest jumps in the NBA, and he became one of the top candidates for most improved award. Well, there's another player on the team that could make a similar jump and have a big season next year for the Grizzlies. We're going to talk about that and more coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, DeMichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. It's the off season. It's, to me, one of the best parts of the year because you get into the nitty gritty. You get, you break down the roster piece by piece, second by second, and more than anything, the enthusiasm. At the end of the offseason, the Grizzlies, because of all the things that they did last year, they will be one of those teams where this fan base, you will be very excited going into next season thinking that this is a championship roster. But in order for that to happen, some things have to break the Grizzlies' way. And first, we appreciate you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. Make sure you continue to listen to us, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Grizzlies is there. So leave a 5-star review, leave a comment on YouTube, whatever you can to keep engaging with us at Locked On Grizzlies. But yeah, the Grizzlies this offseason. Want to have a great offseason, right? Want to be one of those teams that are considered a championship contender. We all like the flashy stuff, the big splash move in free agency, the big trade, to acquire this, superstar or this starter. The Grizzlies, they can put themselves in the market for those decisions. But people have to remember, this was the second youngest roster in the NBA. This was the second youngest roster in the NBA. The Grizzlies will have naturally internal growth because they're so young. As it doesn't sound as fun, as enticing to some of you. I get it. I get it. But think about the jump a Desmond Bane made. Think about the jump Ja Morant made to win the Most Improved Player award. Think about the jump certain players made throughout the season. This is a young roster. Those same players, because they're so young, they have so much more to add to their games. Desmond Bane saw defensive coverages against him towards the end of the season that he hadn't played against for the most part. Ja Morant saw every coverage in the book this season. Jaren Jackson, at the end of the year, became a focal point. He saw how teams plan to stop him and guard him if Ja Morant is out or if he's, going the way he was in that Golden State series for the most part. These players, they got the full dose. So internal growth is going to be a big part of the Grizzlies' success going forward. So about that internal growth, there's one player on this team. We just talked about Desmond Bane, the jump that he made. Ziaire Williams. That's his name. Ziaire Williams. Not saying he can make the full Desmond Bane jump. Desmond Bane went from 9 points to 18 points a game. Most improved player candidate. If he could make even half of that jump, that is scary. I think he can. I think Ziaire Williams is in line to make a big jump a la Desmond Bane to keep this Grizzlies roster moving forward. I'm going to tell you why. One, the size. 6'8", long arms, smooth stroke, runs the floor well. I've said it throughout the season. and I think it was really showcased in the Golden State series. Uh, when Ziaire Williams runs the floor, he's one of the best wings running the floor in the NBA. That's why he gets a lot of those easy alley-oop attempts, those easy layups that he finishes, and all in between. Ziaire Williams is really good at running the floor. He's really good at spot up three-pointers. The game slowed down for him in the second half of the year. The game slowed down pretty much for him, pretty much for me. The Ziaire Williams I saw when I got this job in January, late December, I didn't see the Ziaire Williams that everyone, talked about was a deer in the headlights like that. Of course, I saw him on TV from afar, things like that. But as far as watching him up close, I didn't see it. So when I got here and I saw him playing, I'm like, why hasn't this guy been playing? So I cut on the film, watched some older games. So, this ain't the player that I've been watching. This is like a completely different player. Well, Ziaire Williams said this in December when he missed all that time. I think he only played one game in December. Missing all that time in December, what it did for him was mental reps. I feel like that's one of those cliche things, right? Not in this case. He talked about it all season long. He talked about it in his exit interview on Sunday. He said, getting those mental reps, they slowed the game down for him. And the rest was history. The rest was absolute history. Ziaire, when you look at his straight up raw numbers, 8 points a game this year, 31% from three, 45% from the field is actually pretty good. But post All-Star break, 9.5 points per game, 36% from three-point range. We're talking about 36% compared to 28% before the All-Star break. Here's a big one. 8.5 plus minus after the All-Star break. Just 1.8 before the All-Star break. Clearly making a bigger impact. And it's not just that. How about when he was able to play a lot? When he played 30 or more minutes, 13.3 points on 49% shooting. If Ziaire Williams makes a jump that I expect him to make, there's a case. There's a case for him to be the Grizzlies starting small forward. Let it sink in. Ziaire Williams makes a big jump. If we're talking, 13.3 points per game on 49% shooting when he played 30 or more minutes. That's starter minutes. If he plays starter minutes, if you're getting 13 points per game on 49% shooting, and we're talking a second-year jump, so bump that up to 15, 16 points maybe, or you stay with the 13 points per game. If you're getting that, and plus what you're going to get from Desmond Bane, who say he's going to work on his ball handling even more, and what you're going to get from Ja Morant, and what you're going to get from Jaren Jackson Jr., that's scary. Because one thing we learned about Ziaire Williams last season was he's not going to do too much. He's going to play his role. He's not going to shoot you out of a game, and he's going to take confident shots. He's going to take shots that you've seen him make throughout his career. So there's a case for Ziaire Williams because the progression was there throughout the season. I'm going to tell you some numbers here. October, 31% from the field shooting in 6 games played. 12 games played in November, 37.7% shooting. 27.3% from three-point range in October, 23% in November. Numbers were bad. I just talked about the plus minus, how it jumped. Negative 15.1 in October, negative 6.1 in November. And we're talking 17.7 minutes a game, 19.1 minutes a game. Like I said, December, he only plays one game. And he's only plays 3 minutes, so he throws December out the window. That's the month where he got those mental reps that I mentioned earlier. January, 44.8% shooting, 24.6% from the three-point line. So this is where January was when he was really first starting to get his action. I think the COVID, cases, the Grizzlies had as many as 6-7 players in health and safety protocols in that early January stretch. That's when he got his chance to play. He got a chance to play actually against Golden State, where he guarded Stephen Curry. He played against the Mavs, where he had to guard Luka Doncic. He took on all of those matchups, but it was February where the jump became even more noticeable. 58% shooting in February on 45.5% from three-point range. 10 games. So good sample size here too. That was arguably his best month of the season. 9.7 points per game in that month. And then it carried on. February, March, April. Did not have a bad month. Plus 13.5. Plus 13.5 in February. Plus 13.2 when he's on the court in March. And the shooting numbers, in February, like I said, 58%. March, 47%, but 35% from three-point range. Still a really solid league average type number. Ziaire Williams is if we talked about it, all last season. I wasn't here, but I remember that wing position, that three position. It was a big point of conversation for the Grizzlies. You can go out and get these fancy options and potentially give up some things, but there might be an internal option right here that can help this team get better. And we just talked plus 13, plus minus when he's on the floor. The option might be at home. But if Ziaire Williams does start at small forward, what does that mean for Dillon Brooks? So we'll talk about that coming up after the break. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about athletic greens, because the thing about athletic greens is when you wake up, you don't need to take those other vitamins when you have athletic greens. One scoop of athletic greens, and we're talking you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This lifestyle-friendly option, it only costs you less than $3 per day. Athletic Greens also have over 7,000 five-star reviews and is recommended by professional athletes too. And this professional journalist right here, I'm recommending it to you too. So a subscription with Athletic Greens, it comes with a year's supply of vitamin D, which we know it comes in handy. So take advantage of this Athletic Greens offer today. Dillon Brooks is a key component to what the Grizzlies do. And I just got through talking about Ziaire Williams, right? Ziaire Williams, the jump he can make, the Desmond Bane jump from last season. Remember what the Desmond Bane jump meant for another Grizzlies player, Grayson Allen. He got traded. He got shipped out. That created that starting spot for Desmond Bane, and he flourished. Became legit one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, and showed an expanded game throughout the season. If Ziaire Williams potentially, makes that jump and even threatens to get that starting spot, what does it mean for Dillon Brooks? I'm going to start here because I've heard people, not in the Grizzlies organization, but just, around, media, Grizzlies, opposing media, just general conversation amongst fans as well. People are saying, he should be on the trade block. Well, let me say this. Letting go Dillon Brooks would not be an easy decision. Letting him go would not be an easy decision. So if we're talking, even if he has to come off the bench, which I think would be a superb, great role for him to be kind of, looked at as more of a shot creator off the bench, who I think the Grizzlies, as good as that bench was last season, it did not have that shot creator who can go get a bucket in the final seconds, unless it was Tyus Jones, trying to get to his floater or something like that. They didn't have it. So here's the thing. Everyone knows about all the negative reasons why Dillon Brooks should go. I'm not even gonna focus on that. You all went through the thrill in the postseason. 35% shooting in the postseason, just chugging up a lot of shots and building a lot of misses. I don't have to get into that. Let's talk about all the other things that some people have just forgot. Because remember. I don't know if you remember, but I remember when Dillon Brooks got hurt in early January, when I was writing those stories about when he could come back, the engagement was good. You people were ready to get Dillon Brooks back when he returned in March. There was excitement in FedEx Forum when Dillon Brooks got back in early March. All of that wasn't because he's people know what he means. So I say letting him go, it's not going to be an easy decision if that's what the Grizzlies choose to do. At the end of the day, he's due $11.4 million this season. It is the final year of his contract. So, not hard to move if that's an option the Grizzlies will want to take. But let's talk about the good Dillon Brooks here. Highest field goal percentage since his rookie year was this season. 43.2%. Not a great number, but Dillon Brooks, volume scorer at this point, 43.2%. That's pretty good in the volume scorer category. You're talking, the Allen Iverson, James Harden world, 43.2%. And he did that despite having the lowest three-point percentage of his career, only around 30% from three-point range. That's where probably some people were annoyed because he kept shooting them. But you look at his career numbers, 34, 35. If he gets close to, 33% from three-point range, and we saw the two-point efficiency jumped up, there's a reason to keep him around. Let's talk about the playoffs, because everyone talks about these playoffs and how inconsistent, how bad he was at times. Last year's playoffs, do you remember what he did against the Utah Jazz? If you don't, I'm about to tell you, because I remember. 25.8 points per game in those 5 games. 51.4% from the field, 40% from three-point range. Stepped his game up. He was big time in that series. He was hooping. 18.4 points per game this year. Career high. Not to mention, I haven't even got to this part, which I think is critical. Ask any player on the Grizzlies team, because I asked a lot of them throughout the season. They all will tell you Dillon Brooks is the heart and soul of that Grizzlies team. Let me put that in perspective for you, because the Grizzlies, they don't have one de facto leader. You ask, I've seen people ask them, who's the one guy, who's gonna, step up and say something when things go wrong. People ask me that a lot. And sometimes it's been Kyle Anderson. Sometimes it's been John Morant. Sometimes it's been Dez. Sometimes it's been Jaren Jackson. Sometimes it's been Steven Adams. Sometimes it's been Tyus Jones. They're a unit. But all of that said, just to say, Dillon Brooks is the heart and soul of the Grizzlies. Those players will tell you themselves that's not something you just easily let go. You're talking about a guy who emotionally, energetically gives that team a boost just by his presence. His presence, not even what he does on the floor. Him being there and guys knowing when they see that ball is loose on the floor, Dillon Brooks will die for it. So I got to do the same. That's why the Grizzlies were near the top of the NBA in a stat like loose balls recovered, because they know Dillon Brooks, he's going to get on that floor, and he's one of your starters who plays a lot of minutes. If he's getting on that floor, I should be getting on that floor too. heart and soul of the team. You don't just ship that to the side. But if the Grizzlies were to go in that direction, again, I mentioned, 11.4 million. This is he signed a 3-year, $35 million deal. It's an easy movable contract. And the Grizzlies, they should sell high because I don't think you have to. It's not like a situation where they have to get rid of Dylan and teams will see that they're desperate. They're in a fortunate situation. You have an in-house guy like Ziaire Williams who is getting better, who's going to prove himself over time, that he's a capable starter. So you have that in-house option. You also, you're talking about Dylan Brooks moving. That's $11.4 million contract. You move that, you can probably get a different type of wing back who can make an impact. Then there's also other, movable contracts as well on the Grizzlies. I think if you combine Steven Adams and Dylan Brooks' money, you got $29 million on expiring contracts. Imagine what you can get in the NBA for $29 million. But imagine what you could get with 3 first-round picks. The Grizzlies almost had that. They almost had it, but they have to settle for 2 after losing the Los Angeles Lakers pick. The NBA draft lottery was yesterday. And the Grizzlies, the little hope that they had of getting that pick fell through. But we'll talk about that after the break. But before we talked about that, I want to talk to you about Built Bar. Built Bar, we're talking really good chocolate. I love chocolate. I love chocolate in the morning because it gets me juiced up. It gets me going. Built Bar, they have several options. We're talking mint brownie, coconut almond, the white chocolate cookies and cream. And the thing about Built Bar is they prioritize good taste. They prioritize the good taste, and then they add their own magic to make it as healthy as can be. Half as many calories, and just as much chocolate as candy bars. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. So to get your Built Bar, go to BuiltBar.com. No, go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you can get 15% off your order. So right after you order that Built Bar and, you go take that drive, and if there's something, something annoying you about your car, I know the perfect place you can go to get that fixed. And that's Rock Auto. See, Rock Auto, a lot of these places you're paying 30, 40, or even 100% more for the same parts at these chain stores that you can get at a more affordable rate with Rock Auto. And it's the same case if you go to these car dealerships too. Cheaper prices and reliable options are available at Rock Auto. And I'm talking brake parts, tail lamps, motor oils, something like a new carpet. Rock Auto has you covered with all of that. So go to rockauto.com right now. See what parts that you have for your needs, right? Locked on in there. How did you hear about us section? And go take advantage of those amazingly low, reliable prices. All the car parts you need available at Rock Auto. The NBA draft lottery took place on yesterday. First off, congratulations to the Orlando Magic on securing the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. The Magic, unlike some other franchises, they've had some really good success with those number 1 picks. Shaquille O'Neal comes to mind. Dwight Howard comes to mind. Chris Webber, even though they traded it, Chris Webber comes to mind. And if I'm not mistaken, that Chris Webber trade netted a pretty good player by the name of Anthony Hardaway from Memphis, Tennessee. So the Magic have had success there, but this isn't about the Magic. This is about the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies went into the NBA draft lottery with a 0.4%, 0.38 to be exact, chance to secure a lottery pick from the Los Angeles Lakers. The pick was this pick from the Jonas Valanciunas Steven Adams trade with the Pelicans, and in the deal, the Pelicans, really smooth. They made the pick top, I believe it was top 10 protected, meaning if it fell in the top 10, it went to the Pelicans. If it fell behind the top 10, it would go to the Grizzlies. For a large part of this season, as the Lakers were, falling down the standings, it still felt like, the pick could fall in that 11, 12, 13, 14 range, which would be perfect case scenario for the Grizzlies. They still get the pick and they get it at a peak. They get it at a peak spot. So what happened was worse than any Grizzlies fan could have imagined. The Lakers plummeted, did not make the play-in, which gave the Pelicans high odds to keep the pick. The Pelicans got the pick, and the pick is 8th overall in this NBA draft. So the pick is gone now. So that conversation's over. What does it mean? Well, now the Grizzlies will have 2 second-round picks to replace that first-round pick. They get 2 second-round picks from the Pelicans in the Steven Adams, Jonas Valanciunas trade. One of those second-round picks will be the 47th overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft coming up. And another one of those picks will be in 2025. We're talking the draft right now. We're going to finish this conversation, but before we finish this conversation, I want to talk to you about Locked On Big Board, because this goes right in hand with the conversation we're having right now. This is where the Locked On experts, they discuss the NBA draft, mock drafts, player ranking, and the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So go check out Locked On Big Boards, and you can get an even more detailed perspective of what we're talking about right now. So back to this conversation, the Grizzlies, instead of getting the top lottery pick from the Lakers, they settled for 2 second-round picks, 47th overall this year, 2025 second-rounder coming in later. So how does that impact the future? If the Grizzlies got that lottery pick, they would have 3 first-round picks. They still have 2, 22nd pick from the Utah Jazz, the 29th pick from their own spot for having the second best record in the NBA. The thing about it is, if you had 3 first-round picks, the Grizzlies, the situation that they're in, the young roster, the nucleus being in place, hard to see them keeping 3 picks. There would have been some movement made. It would have been fun to see what type of movement. Are we talking moving up even farther in the draft to get a player? Or are we talking about acquiring a veteran asset from somewhere else? That is the position that the Grizzlies put themselves in with possibly having that pick. So we don't get to see that now, but they still have 2, a 22nd pick and a 29th pick. How does that impact the future? I'm going to throw one suggestion, early suggestion out there. The Grizzlies have a need probably for a backup point guard going forward. We'll see how that plays out, because there's a realistic chance of Tyus Jones returning, to become one of the highest paid backup point guards in the NBA. I can see that happening if he doesn't like the starter market. But if it doesn't happen, the Grizzlies have 2 first-round picks. I don't think you keep a 22nd and a 29th first-round pick, especially when you get the 47th overall pick, and which isn't that much further down the board, and you can add that rookie onto a 2-way contract or something like that. The thing with the 22nd and the 29th pick is I think those should be packaged. And possibly, depending on how the draft board plays out, you move up a little bit, and there's a point guard out there. I saw him at a Grizzlies game towards the end of the season. He was sitting on the court side over there with his father, taking pictures with fans. His name is Kennedy Chandler. He's from Memphis. He played in Memphis. at Briarcrest. Had a really good relationship. Penny Hardaway. Why not? Why not? If Kennedy Chandler is projected to go in that 15 to 20 range, you have a 22nd and a 29th pick. You have a need for backup point guard. One thing about Kennedy Chandler, he showed that he can facilitate. He shot the ball better as the season went on. He can play. He can play. And there's a need for backup point guard on the Grizzlies. I think that would be a solid option if it comes to that. The Grizzlies have the draft capital to make it happen. So we'll see how it plays out. There's still, some time to see how this goes. The NBA draft lottery, as always, the Grizzlies are starting to work out players now. Of course, over the course of that time, we'll have you covered with some of those workouts, letting you know who's coming in working out for the Grizzlies, who the Grizzlies are liking, and quite frankly, who should the Grizzlies draft. Again, I'm DeMichael Cole. Follow me on Twitter at DeMichaelC. We'll be right back here tomorrow. But before you go, make sure you checked out Locked On NBA. Locked On NBA is where those Locked On experts, take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. So right now, there's 4 playoff teams left. So thing about Locked On NBA is you're going to get a deep playoff analysis on those 4 teams, and there's going to be coverage of all 30 teams around the NBA. But we appreciate you for listening to Locked On Grizzlies. Tomorrow, we're going to have more off-season talk on player improvements, key stats from the Grizzlies season, and more. But we'll see you then on Locked On Grizzlies.